All right, guys. So we're talking about oligopolies. We just started, and so what I want to talk about now that we know what an oligopoly is, an oligopoly, if you will recall, is an industry with just a few firms. I want to kind of clarify what we mean when we're talking about the real world, right? Our models are going to assume that we actually have like a small n number of firms, but in practice we might have a large number. What's more important is how much of the market is dominated by a few firms. And it doesn't take much before strategy starts to become really important. In particular, what we'll say is how many is dominated by 4 firms. And this result, this how much of the market in percentage terms, is going to be, we're going to give this a name called the 4 firm concentration ratio. And we'll say that if the 4 firm concentration ratio is greater than 40%, if that's the case, then we have an oligopoly. That's what will be our working definition of oligopoly. Because at that point, you start to run into concerns where it makes sense for one firm, for one of the top 4 firms, to pay attention to what one of the other top 4 firms is doing. Whereas in competition and monopolistic competition, we think that is less the case. So let's see, what are some examples of industries? I'm taking data from the 2002 Census of Businesses, and so some retail industries that have 4 firm concentration ratios. I got this from the Census of Businesses. Pharmacies and drugstores. I'll abbreviate a little bit, but drugstores had 53% of the market was dominated by the 4 largest firms. Home centers, right? So this is like the fact that I can say them tells you it's an oligopoly, right? Home Depot, Lowe's. There used to be more of these like Triangle and Heckingers, and I just haven't seen many in a while. But home centers, 91% of the market is dominated by the top 4. I'll change colors just to mix it up. Optical goods stores. I feel like I used to know what these were because I have glasses, but I started buying my glasses on the internet. 44%, just barely an oligopoly. Oh, lens crafters, right? That's what we're talking about here. Children's shoe stores, kids' shoes. 72%. I think Stride Rite is one of those, if I'm not mistaken. Right. So those are the kind of things we're talking about here. Bookstores. Used to hear. I don't know. This was 2002. I'm curious if you. It's all Amazon now, right? They're just eating everybody's lunch. I don't know. They just closed down their publishing arm, so maybe that's not the case. But in any case, 78% of the market is dominated by the top 4. So that's clearly an oligopoly. And then warehouse club stores. Sam's Club and Costco. That's the biggest one here, 92%. So clearly that's an oligopoly. Sam's Club is paying attention to what Costco's doing and vice versa. It only makes sense. All right, what about manufacturing? The other side of the market that I have here. I'm talking about goods markets, not service markets, but that's right. Furniture manufacturing. The top 4 firms make up 64% of this market. Aircraft. I'm surprised that it's as low as it is, but aircraft is 81%. Boeing, Cessna. To be honest, I don't know that market real well. Heavy duty trucks. And these ones make a little bit more sense to me than some of the retail ones. Although I guess with retail, there's a lot just in terms of overhead of location, finding a location. Like marketing expenditures are really large, so that might bring up the minimum average total cost. Primary battery. I gotta admit, when I was looking through these industries, some of these I'm like, I'm not even sure what they sell. But so if you know what primary battery means, let me know. 87%. Small arms ammunition. 83% of the market is dominated by the top 4 firms. And then glass containers. Some of these, like, it's surprising. I don't know. It never would have occurred to me that glass containers would be on this list. But glass containers, Apparently that market is highly concentrated. 88% of glass containers are made by the top 4 companies. So those are concentration ratios. So when we talk about when we talk about oligopoly, these are the kind of things that we're talking about, right? Now, this measure is not perfect. In general, we expect manufacturing to be more concentrated than retail, partly just because the fixed costs are so high in lots of cases to build a power plant. There are not a lot of students who come up to me and say, hey, you know what I want to do? I want to build a primary battery assembly plant. There are lots of people come up with me for ideas for not this stuff, to be honest, but barbershops and restaurants and stuff like that. Monopolistic competitors is where a lot of my students' ideas are from. New, entrepreneurs. But this measure has a few problems. First, this is defined by sales by. So let me just outline these problems that I want to note for you. These are sales by U.S. firms. So it might be the case that there are some oligopolies that are not captured by this, because there might be an international oligopoly of which Americans are not involved, right? Americans. In addition, if there's a lot of international competition, it may be the case that for small arms ammo, sure, 83% of the U.S. sales by U.S. firms are from the top 4, but worldwide that might not be the case. Second, what? Well, second is national accounting with this data, but there may be local competition, and so it might be the case, for example, that you have 78% of the market for books captured by the top 4 firms. That doesn't mean that there aren't other firms that are competing. Or optical goods, maybe a better example, 44%. It might be the case that lens crafters often is one of 4 or 5 in a market, and so this national accounting, this masks where you might see some local competition. You might not, but it's just hard. 4 firm concentration ratios and capture that for you. Lastly, it's within SIC codes, so all these are within what are standard industry classification codes. So I guess that's codes. So I'm sorry for duplicating that. Oh no, that's classification. So standard industry classification codes. And so firms might compete across industries, just across SIC codes. So glass containers might compete with aluminum containers, or might compete with plexiglass containers or plastic containers, and that competition is not captured here. They might sell similar or identical products, but nonetheless, right? This gives you a rough idea. So, for example, as of 2002, HP, Dell, Acer, and Apple counted for 75% of the desktops. All those firms are paying attention to each other, right? Home centers, clearly Home Depot and Lowe's, they're paying attention to each other. And so we're going to use the tools for oligopoly. Those would be useful in any of these markets, in any market that looks like this. Game theory is the tool to use. All right, next we're going to talk about why oligopolies exist and why they form and why they are sustained. And then after that, we'll get into strategic analysis. So thanks, guys. See you in the next video. Bye.